I'm Emiliano. I'm the founder and the CEO of a company called Satellogic. We build satellites and we launch satellites to space. What we're doing actually is building a planetary scale analytics platform that is based on a proprietary constellation of satellites. Okay, so we started the company 5 years ago, and we started developing sound technology, leveraging commercial off-the-shelf electronics, new manufacturing techniques, and computer design, hardware and mechanics, and optics and electronics. We figured out a way to build high-resolution imaging satellites that cost 1,000 times less than what traditional satellites cost. So instead of building this monolithic, 1.5-ton satellites that take images of Earth and cost hundreds of millions, up to $1 billion, we're building satellites that cost a few $100,000 and are 35 kilograms and can still do a lot of the same things. Okay? So our satellites today can take high-resolution imaging of the planets. Instead of taking 10 years to go through a whole cycle for developing them, we can do them in a few months. And once we put them in space, because they're so cheap, we can put a large constellation of the satellites and start collecting a lot more data of what's going on the planet. We think this gives us a very unique opportunity, okay? The opportunity to start looking at our planet completely afresh. Up until now, there's a lot of global processes going on that we really have no way to measure or quantify. We think by putting a very large constellation of satellites in orbit as a sensor network, we'll be able to start quantifying some of these processes in real time and have impact in the way we produce and distribute food for 7 billion people, and the way in which we generate and distribute energy for 7 billion people. Also in building the infrastructure and monitoring how we build the infrastructure to be able to do that. And finally, to do it in a way that's sustainable, so that we're not depleting resources from future generations. By putting a large sensor network around the Earth, we will be able to quantify these processes for the first time and look at the Earth meter by meter in real time to see what's going on. A little bit, you probably heard a lot about the quantified self. People putting Fitbits and other things on their wrists to measure every one of those activities. So we started thinking, why not do the same thing for Earth? Why can't we actually quantify everything that's going on the planet and start deriving insights from that information? So that's what we set out to do. Over the last few years, we launched 3 satellites, early prototypes of this technology. Since 2013, we launched the first couple of satellites in 2013, our third satellite in 2014. And we're starting to roll out this year our larger constellation. We're launching 2 more satellites in May 30th. They're actually shipping to China, where we were launched from in a few days, in April 22nd. After these 2 satellites, we have 4 more going out at the end of the year, and we're looking at another 19 satellites to launch next year. We're growing this constellation until the end of the decade, when we expect to have a constellation of 300 of these satellites around the Earth, essentially to be able to measure anything that goes on the planet with 5-minute frequency. Any point on the Earth, every 5 minutes. This is a little bit what the images that we take look like. You can see cars, you can see rivers, you can see roads, you can see individual trees. This is just in the visible spectrum. Besides the visible spectrum, we take images in the near-infrared spectrum and the thermal spectrum, and there's a lot of things that you cannot see with your eyes. These capabilities give us a very unique new way to look at what's going on Earth. So imagine that you have the chance to point at any point on the planet and see what's going on. How will that change the way you can make decisions in your companies? How would that make you make different decisions in local governments or in national governments? How we would relate with our planet in a different way if we could know and if we could derive insights for what's going on. That's a little bit the mission of the company. These are our next 2 satellites. This is our manufacturing facility in Uruguay. This is last week, actually. Those 2 satellites are now ready to ship. Those things in the middle, now ready to ship. So we will launch them in May 30th, and after May 30, you will be able to start looking at the images that we generate from the planet from our website. So we welcome you to do so. And I'll leave it to this, guys, and we have to answer questions afterwards. Thanks.
Well, first of all, it's a great privilege to be here today. My name is Ernesto Rodriguez Leal. I am an associate professor at Tecnologías Monterrey, and I'm also CEO of Wearabot. It's a startup that we are focusing right now on helping the elderly to improve their mobility. I would like to thank also Joan for inviting me here today. I'm very excited. And I've been working on robotics for the last 10 years. Everything started when I was at King's College London doing my PhD under the supervision of Professor Jan Dai. And I think more, especially me, I feel very excited about this topic, and I'm sure more of one of you as well, because who hasn't dreamt of a future in which robotics can help us to overcome our challenges and even to help us augment our capacities. But somehow, all these dreams have been not fulfilled. I think robotics is right now in a deceptive stage and is about to become exponential. And we are very lucky because we are the generation who is going to witness all these changes. I have a particular motivation in working on robotics because of a personal story. This is my dad. 3 years ago, he started losing his mobility. He couldn't walk very well. He couldn't raise his arms. He had a couple of major surgeries and hundreds of rehabilitation sessions, but his condition didn't improve. Modern medicine has failed him to get back his mobility. I'm pretty sure that this story might be familiar to all of you because my dad is just one of the 600 million senior citizens in the world. And guess what? By 2050, we are all going to be 2 billion of them. As in our modern society, thanks to exponential technologies, we will be able to achieve longevity. But the question is, how is going to be our quality of life once we reach old age? And the elderly have a serious problem of mobility loss, and we are working very hard to help them. This is mainly because of several conditions such as stroke, arthritis, or chronic joint injury. And right now, one option, if we want to help our relatives, is to send them to rehabilitation. But the process is really, really bad. I know it. I witnessed with my dad. It's expensive, it's not accessible, and it's very painful for the user. So now that we are working on robotics, we thought about the possibilities and alternatives of using technology to enhance our bodies. And it's not a crazy idea after all, because as human beings, we haven't received an upgrade in our hardware for the last 50,000 years. So maybe robotics is a solution to this situation. So together with my team, one day we thought, how about if we give the elderly Iron Man suits so they can improve their mobility? Now, Iron Man is, of course, fiction, but exoskeletons have been going around for several decades. In fact, right now, this technology that is still deceptive and is about to become exponential, it's expensive, it's not versatile at all, and it has a very limited control. And I'm going to tell you a few examples. On one hand, we have this beautiful piece of technology that is a Cyberdyne HAL robot. It's very expensive. The exoskeletons can cost from $67,000 up to $125,000. This is really expensive. And one reason is because they come in one single piece. If you need an exoskeleton, you need to buy the whole thing. They also have several technical problems because most of them are designed with telescopic linkages, and that means that you can adjust the length of the exoskeleton to fit you, somehow more or less to fit you well. But it's actually a problem because once the rotational axis of the exoskeleton does not coincide with the joint of the user, it can cause more problems than benefit. It's a great problem. And also, it's very absurd to think that the most advanced exoskeletons in our days is controlled with a joystick. Also, if you observe the clinical centers and rehabilitation centers, you will see that they have practices from several hundred years. There is still one person delivering the therapy. It's not uniform. Even you get treated by the same person every day. It's not going to be the same rehabilitation session. And we're doing this in a blind way. We're not measuring what's going on with the user. So together with my team at Tecnológico de Monterrey, we created a spin-off called Wearabot. And we have developed an active exoskeleton that can be used either as a motion assistant or as a rehabilitation device. And this is how it works, and this is what we're doing. First, we are scanning, we're digitizing the human body in order to obtain the rotational axis of the joints. either to make biologically fit design or to set up properly the exoskeleton. We're also applying our modularity concept, which means that the exoskeleton can be broken apart and the user can have access to specific exoskeletons for individual joints, such as the knee, the elbow, the shoulder. They can interconnect to each other to form a full body exoskeleton, and this lowers the cost significantly. About the control systems, we are using non-invasive technology to pick up brain and muscle signals in order to identify the precise instance in which the user requires torque assistance. We are doing this in a non-invasive way, and we are using artificial intelligence, and we are using extreme learning machine algorithms to do this. Concerning the rehabilitation process, we're using virtual and augmented reality, and with this we are able to create gamified scenarios in which the user can follow and can play. And all these scenarios are linked to exercises that have to do with specific and target rehabilitation routines for the user. All the exoskeleton itself is an Internet of Things device, and it's full with sensors, accelerometers, and everything goes to a tablet or an application that the doctor has in his or her office, and it helps them to take better decisions about the status and the next steps to follow for the user. We envision a future in which exoskeletons are going to be democratized. We want every single person to have access to this technology because we want to empower our users. Just like my dad, that they can continue doing the things that they really loved when they were young, and why not to pursue new challenges and dreams. Our purpose and our objective is to end with physical disparity that is affecting or will affect each one of us in a single point of our time, and we believe that with the use of robotics we can do this. Thank you.
Great, Ernesto. Congratulations. First of all, it's an honor to be in this stage presenting the advance of robotics in my field in terms of service robots and artificial intelligence application for residential use. Since my 16, I'm a curious entrepreneur, and in the field of robotics, in the field of what domestic robots can bring to Latin America specifically. And in the following presentation, I will show you the scenario that we have in Latin America in terms of service robots and some cultural and corporate implication that the technology has with this. Emiliano and Ernesto talk a lot about the huge opportunity that robotics can bring to the space and the healthcare field. But first of all, I would like to define together with you what is a robot and a mobile robot. And to make this definition, I would like to compare it to the human body. We have a human body that we feel through our senses, we think through our central processor unit that is our brain, and we do through our body. The robots sense through sensors, think through processors, and do or act through hardware and software. Sensors and processors, they are more smaller, they are more cheaper, they are more smart. And with this definition, we can define together that a robot is a machine that can feel, they can sense the environment and make a specialized action plan. And we have to make clear that the robotics is not just R2-D2 from Star Wars, it's a lot more. And maybe a lot of us make a direct relation with robots or artificial intelligence applications, and we are not conscious about this. In Latin America, since my 16, I helped my father looking for strategic gaps in terms of business, in terms of marketing, to introduce robotics in Latin America. In 2005, we introduced the Dolphin, the first robotic pool cleaner in Argentina. It was the first domestic robot that entered to Argentina and came with a lot of cultural, a lot of corporate implication of this technology, that we incorporate this technology. Right now, we are active in 6 countries with Maytronics. Let me ask you a question. Please raise your hands. Do you have a robot in your house? How many of you has a robot in his house? A few, but not most, maybe 20% of the audience. let me make another question. Do you think you will have one by 2020, in 4 years' time? A few more, maybe 30%. And this show exactly this gap. We have the technological possibility that is really exponential. And we have really lower the social, the political, and the economic change, the real life. This reality gap, this really show us what will come in the next few years in terms of robotics. And this is a graphic from Harvard Business Review that really synthesizes a lot of this acceptance to robotics that we have in terms of threats to humans and level of humanness. We can find in the upper right corner Terminator, and in the lower corner the WALL-E. And we have there is a lot of theories surrounding the cultural implications concerning robots, but we have really a huge gap between the acceptance of these machines and these products, these utilities. Right now in a house you can find robotic pool cleaners, you can have vacuum cleaners, you can have lawn mowers, window cleaners, robotic pets, grill cleaners, etc., etc., etc. A lot of really useful applications that it's important to make clear that when a robot comes to an industry, it's because it's make a job really better than a human, exponentially better than a human capability. In terms of artificial intelligence, we can find mobile assistants like Microsoft Cortana, Apple Siri, or the M from Facebook that is really help us on a daily basis in terms of average consumer, and really what artificial intelligence can bring to the home will make really a huge evolutions in terms of the relationship between humans and machines. There is some examples that are really shocking. For example, Eternity.me. It's a social network that registers all our digital tattoos, all our check-in, new friends, or register in search index. And what it makes is an artificial intelligence for end users that when this person dies, it makes an avatar with your personality to continue communicating with your friends, with your family, with your colleagues. And this will change radically how we conceive life and how we conceive the human relations. This looks like science fiction, but it's really a technology that will become, and we will see more and more in the last few years. And we have to make clear that robotics is not just artificial intelligence or domestic robots with mobile or satellites or exoskeletons. There's a lot of machines that use robotics as a basis, like for example drones, autonomous vehicles, experimental robotics like now that we have one here. I think the Florida University has one here in the stand booth. They are all operated by robotics basis. We in Maytronics, the company that I work for, an Israeli company, we have developed an artificial intelligence drowning detection system. It's a system for swimming pools, commercial swimming pools, that detects live through artificial intelligence when a person is drowning live and tell the lifeguard, that this person is drowning in a specific point of the swimming pool. So we can see a lot of advance in terms of service, in terms of robotics and artificial intelligence for the average use and the average application, because this is life and this saves lives. And in terms of market, the service robotics, combined personal and professional, expect to grow around 21-22% in the next 4 years, and the service market is projected to reach almost $11 billion by 2020, according to global industry analysts. It's really numbers that are shaping the industry and are forecasting a lot. And there is a more shocking premise that by 2025, robots will take over 30% of our jobs. It's in less than 10 years. This will make radical change in terms of in terms of what we conceive as work, in terms of social acceptance, in terms of economic development, in terms of political development also. And there is a more shocking premise that is 4 years later, by 2029, robots will have reached human level of intelligence. This is Ray Kurzweil. Tomorrow he will give the feature keynote that we all expect for. And a little conclusion or a little more shocking premise is that the innovation industry stipulates that by 2035, the amount of autonomous units will surpass the level of people in the planet. So this will make radically change in terms of social acceptance, in terms of work, in terms of this reality gap that we have as a society. And just to finish, Isaac Asimov